Hello and welcome back to the Premier League years simulation here on FM22. We're now on to the 2028-29 season. I think this is season 7 of the simulation. Just a quick recount of the end of last season, so just taking a look at the table. As a reminder, Manchester City are the defending champions heading into this new season. They took the title away from Chelsea, who had done 2 in a row previously. We saw Spurs finally finish in the top 4 for, I think, the first time in the simulation. We saw Liverpool drop off a little bit. Man United, Arsenal and Newcastle will all play... Manchester United will play Champions League football because they won the Europa League. Arsenal and Newcastle will play Europa League football because Newcastle won the Conference League. So we don't have to look at that competition this season. But the 3 sides that went down, Crystal Palace again, Reading again, and the surprise package this time was Wolves. So we say goodbye to them. We'll probably see a few Wolves and potentially Palace players in the transfers over this summer window. But now moving into the new season and the season we're going to be covering in this video, the 3 newly promoted sides. 2 of them are pretty familiar, but 1 is a new side within this simulation. We start with the couple of familiar teams. Blackburn are our first one. Frank Lampard brings them back to the Premier League after a 4-year absence. They came second in the Championship, so a nice smooth promotion for them after 4 years away, almost 3 seasons, 4 years away. We then go only 1 place down alphabetically to AFC Bournemouth, because the AFC isn't counting for some reason in the league setup, but there we go. Eddie Howe is back at Bournemouth for a 3rd time, and he's got them back into the Premier League as Bournemouth start to yo-yo a little bit. They did win the Championship title, which is the first time they've done that since the 2014-15 season. So they have a 2nd Championship title to their name. Eddie Howe, how many times can you manage the same team? But the interesting story for this season is Derby County are back in the Premier League. They have spent, it's barely there. They have spent 20 years outside the Premier League. I believe the 2007-8 season was the season they broke the record for least points in a Premier League season. Obviously, we know of the troubles of Derby County in real life financially. They were relegated in the first season, coming last in the Championship. They then spent 4 seasons in League 2 before promotion. Through the playoffs, actually, they weren't even automatically promoted from League 1. They then had a pretty solid season of mid-table obscurity, which is always great for a newly promoted side. But last season, they stung the league. They sneak into the playoffs in 6th, and they go on to win the playoff final, overcoming Fulham on penalties in the semi-finals, and then a massive East Midlands derby in the Championship playoff final where they beat Nottingham Forest 1-0 and somehow gained promotion to the Premier League. I'm not fully sure how Derby have pulled this off, but what an effort from them. We'll take a look at the season preview. It's something I haven't looked at too much during the save, but Manchester City favourites ahead of Chelsea. They've been the 2 sides competing for the Premier League titles through this save recently. We have Liverpool, Man United, Spurs all the way up to 5th, which is pretty good for them after a 3rd place last year. Arsenal, Newcastle in here as well. If we look to the bottom, Derby County at 1,000 to 1. Good luck. You might break your own record for least points in a Premier League season. Blackburn down at 400 to 1 as they try and stay up for the first time within this simulation. And Norwich, actually, who are into a 2nd season in the Premier League. The first time they hadn't yo-yoed for 10 years. They're actually predicted to go down as well. Southampton also lower than Bournemouth in the predictions, which is surprising. You look to mid-table, you wonder if any of these sides can break this top 7, which has been pretty consistent for a while now. I think the last time was Leeds and Leicester breaking in. In fact, Leicester didn't even really break in, they just happened to win the Europa League. So Leeds was the last team to break it about 3 seasons ago, 2-3 seasons ago. The only other thing that we are going to do now is take a look at any early transfers that have gone down in this transfer window. And we immediately actually find a couple of moves from the 2 big title contenders. Manchester City trying to defend their Premier League crown. They go out and bring in Inaki Williams' brother, Nico Williams, from Athletic Bilbao. A player who is breaking through at Bilbao in real life at the moment and has been very, very good for Athletic Bilbao throughout the save, really. Wasn't standout in his very first season, but he was still very young then, and then just broke out and has been superb since. But he now comes to the Premier League for a potential £84 million. So the biggest transfer of the window early on. But Chelsea actually made the first step in the battle between the 2 sides by bringing in Amin Gouiri from OGC Nice. That was for just under £60 million. He'd kind of been having his way with Liga, just doing his thing. We've seen Nice a couple of times appear in the Champions League, so we know that he was playing European football as well, but now makes a near £60 million move to Stamford Bridge, and we'll see what he can do to improve this Chelsea side. As we go down a little bit further, we actually find 2 Wolves players leaving after their relegation. Tino Livramento heading to Leicester for £42 million, and Stephen Bergwijn heading to West Ham for £40 million. So West Ham are only in is this their 3rd season? Yeah, this is their 3rd season back in the top flight. They are starting to make some bigger money moves on a player that is 30 years old. Obviously, ex-Spurs, actually has spent almost the entire simulation at Wolves. So they bring him in. As we go down a little bit further, we find a lot of January moves. We do find Norwich surprisingly making a pretty big move for Kevin Alvarez from Brentford, the Mexican right back. We have seen his name 1 or 2 times during the simulations in the defensive stat categories, because he has got some really good marking, decision-making, determination way up there as well. He's a very good player. Obviously 29 years of age, will turn 30 midway through this season, and wasn't particularly standout for Brentford in the Championship last year. And obviously Brentford did not return, so they have a 2nd straight season at the 2nd tier. But Norwich deciding that Kevin Alvarez will help them to try and stay up for another season. If we go a little bit further down, I'm probably not going to go too far at this point, so I don't think there are all that many big transfers. We do find Blackburn, obviously newly promoted once again to the Premier League. They've gone to Crystal Palace, who were relegated last season, and brought in Nathan Teller, obviously the Southampton youngster, who has had a very short spell at Leeds and a decently long spell at Crystal Palace. Now returns to the Premier League immediately with Blackburn Rovers. Actually, in the last video, I mentioned how many Blackburn players were sold because they sort of got stuck in the Championship, spent 3 years there, and it seemed that the players got fed up by last season. But funnily enough, they actually returned to the Premier League and they have to do a bit of a rebuild to try and get the squad together. Nathan Teller is going to lead that. As we go a little bit further down, we actually find Shola Shortire, who was still at Manchester United, but has finally made a move away after 33 Premier League games and just 4 goals. He heads to Sheffield United, and we know that Sheffield United have been slowly but surely building into a top half Premier League side in this save. They've been in the top flight in every single season that we've slow simmed. And they really want to become something now, don't they? Shola Shortire is their big move so far in this window. We'll see if they make any more big moves. We'll see if we can find one or two more transfers. We're finding a lot of either last season or January ones. There's not been too much. We do find Devon Barrington for £8 million going from Southampton to Liverpool. A 21-year-old fullback who, in all honesty, doesn't look that good and is actually transfer listed. In fact, he was transfer listed on the 9th of June. He was purchased on the 9th of June. He's been transfer listed as they're looking to make a profit on him, knowing the activation of his buyback clause. So Southampton put a buyback clause in the deal of 9.2 million. And Liverpool are trying to get Southampton to pay that mere days after Liverpool bought him for 8 million. That is an interesting strategy that I have never seen before. I'm very confused. I don't think that's going to work somehow. If we look for just a couple more, we find Leicester making a pretty cheap bid, actually, 6.25 million for Mateus Nascimento, a Brazilian striker coming to the King Power, who spent quite a long time at Manchester United, actually, but only appeared 66 times in the Premier League, netting 11. Came over from Botafogo in 2022. I mean, he made double-digit appearances each season, but never impressed, never really made a mark. But he gets a go at Leicester as, well, once again, a depth player, actually. Ethan Ampadu, by the way, didn't notice that one a little while ago, and Daniel Samek was last season as well. I don't think he's really going to do too much at Chelsea. But what we can do now is we're going to sim ahead to September to get out of the summer transfer window. There is a European Championships this season, so we'll have a really brief look at who wins the Euros. We'll take a look at the European group stages as well. We only have to look at Europa League and Champions League this season. And then we'll finish it off by summarising the summer transfer window and seeing how the Premier League looks after roughly 3 or 4 games. We've skipped forward to the 3rd of September, and as mentioned, there has been a European Championships in 2028, and the winners are Spain, but possibly more impressive, Austria made the finals of the European Championships. They did get beaten 4-1 in the final. Pedri, Nino, Laporte and Nico Williams actually putting the icing on the cake at 4-0. Wolf ended up scoring in added time as a mere consolation, but at least he can say he scored in a Euros final. But Spain take the crown. Austria, heck of a performance from them. And actually the next Euros in 2032 will be hosted by Scotland and Wales. England nowhere in sight. That's quite interesting. Sweden made the semi-finals. They fell 2-1 to Spain. And Austria ended up beating Italy in a penalty shootout in the semi-finals. So no Holland, who were the defending champions. France ended up losing a penalty shootout to Sweden. Okay, Holland made the quarterfinals and lost to Italy. No England whatsoever. Scotland made the quarterfinals, losing to Austria. England ended up losing in the last 16 to Spain, 2-1. It was Spain going on to win it. Turkey knocking out Belgium. There were some very interesting results here. I mean, Slovenia almost toppling France. Austria beating Portugal in the last 16. Some very, very intriguing games. Holland actually had to get past Germany in the last 16, so they had a really, really tough run of things in trying to defend their crown. But Spain are the new European champions. Speaking of Europe, we can now take a look at the European club competitions. Europa Conference League is pretty pointless this season. No English sides in it, so we won't... Well, I'll probably take a look at who wins it, but we're not going to follow it too closely. Europa League will have 2 English sides in, Newcastle, who won the Europa Conference League last year to qualify for the Europa League, they will be in Group D alongside Lyon, Shamrock Rovers, and Dinamo Zagreb. So Ireland getting a representative. That is very nice. I would imagine that Newcastle and Lyon will get through this group pretty easily. I think Zagreb will be third and Shamrock for fourth. Sorry, any Irish viewers and anyone who supports Shamrock Rovers. Group E is where Arsenal are found. They have a group alongside Zorya Luhansk, Sporting Lisbon, and Malmo. I think Arsenal should get through this group. I'm going to put Sporting as second place, so Arsenal to win the group. I'm going to go Malmo for third. I'm going to put Zorya in last. And it's one of those rare occasions where England has 5 Champions League teams for this season, thanks to Manchester United winning the Europa League, but still only finishing 5th. So they get promoted to the Champions League based on that. We take a look, though. Spurs will sit in Group A after coming 3rd in the Premier League last season. And they have got an extremely rough group in PSG, AC Milan, and Shakhtar Donetsk. We've seen Shakhtar spoil the party a couple times in the Champions League previously, like topping a group that contained Barcelona and one of the Premier League sides. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Arsenal. It was somebody like that, but they topped that group. So they're no pushovers. And obviously Milan and PSG we've seen make runs on near multiple occasions. So I think Spurs might end up dropping. They might not even get Europa League. That's going to be a really, really tough group. We go down a little bit further. We find Manchester City placed in Group C alongside Porto, Valencia, and Bayer Leverkusen. It's a pretty tricky group, but I think Man City should still win it. It's going to be very hard to pick who ends up coming second. I'm going to go with Valencia, though, even though we haven't seen too much of them in this save. I'm going to go Porto third and Bayer Leverkusen for last. We've seen Porto be pretty impressive and make the knockout stages multiple times. I'm going to say Valencia this time. We don't go down too much further to get to Group D, where we find Liverpool's group, which contains Benfica, Ajax, and Zenit. I am going to go with Liverpool to top that group. I think Zenit will come bottom of it. Benfica and Ajax is going to be a very difficult one, but I'm going to say Ajax for second and Benfica to drop to Europa League. Again, how have Chelsea and Juventus ended up in the same group yet again? This seems to happen every single season, and Juventus actually knocked Chelsea out the Champions League last year. So Chelsea looking for some revenge there. They played each other 4 times last season. They're drawn alongside OGC Nice, who we obviously mentioned with the Amin Gouiri transfer to Chelsea. So Gouiri will play his old side twice. And then RB Salzburg fill out the rest of that group. I think it will be Chelsea and Juve to go through as they did last year. Chelsea to top the group. And then let's put RB Salzburg for third and Nice to finish bottom, because we know that they've lost a very important player going into this season. The final team that we are looking for is Manchester United, who, as mentioned, won the Europa League last year in order to qualify for the Champions League. They have a group of RB Leipzig, Inter Milan, and Vitória de Guimarães. Now, that is a very surprising team to see in the group stages, but well done to them. I'm going to go. I think Inter Milan will top this group because we've seen how good they've been, especially the past few seasons. I'm going to go for Manchester United to come second, and then Leipzig third, and Vitória to finish bottom of that group. And with that European coverage all done and dusted, we return to the Premier League to look at the transfers that went down from 25th of June onwards to the end of the window. And as you can see, Newcastle have been busy. They turned to Ajax to bring in the Brazilian winger Anthony, who is now 28 years of age, played over 200 league games for Ajax. A superb winger. You can see his value there. But Newcastle turned to him. He had an incredible season last time out. His best average rating of his career, 10 goals, 9 assists. He's had a 20-goal season as well. Quite how that season wasn't better than that one, I don't know, but okay. But Anthony, now a Newcastle player. They also turned to Real Madrid to bring in Serbian centre-back Nikola Milenkovic, who is now 30, starts the game at Fiorentina, went to Real Madrid quite early on for 27.5 million, and he kind of was a bit part, really. He didn't play a whole lot, but Newcastle have splashed £61 million on him. So I think Newcastle might be ready to make that step towards Champions League football. It's definitely what they're going for. Though they did actually gain £52 million from PSG in selling Portuguese striker Gonçalo Ramos. We didn't see a whole lot of Ramos. Though I don't know why I didn't mention him last season, because he scored 19 goals. But I don't remember mentioning him last year. That's definitely a slip on my part, because a 19-goal season is very impressive. It's PSG turn on that. We find Gabriel Jesus has left the Premier League. He's heading to Inter Milan from Manchester City. Jesus unfortunately fell behind Haaland and Sesko. He is now 31 as well. So pretty good move from Manchester City, really, all in all, to get £52 million for a guy who was a backup striker. And then an interesting transfer, although we can see where it was funded from. Villa selling Orkun Koksu, 27-year-old Turkish midfielder, off to Real Madrid. He was reasonably decent for Villa without really standing out. His first 2 games of this season were terrible, but makes a near £50 million move to Real Madrid, which allows Aston Villa to spend £50 million on Brenner from Spurs. Now, I did mention when Brenner went to Spurs, it was a big £46.5 million move from Real Madrid. But he ended up actually only playing 18 times in 2 seasons. Did get 5 goals in 11 games in his first year. So he's proved that he certainly can be prolific. And since he has joined Villa, he's got 2 in his first 3 games. So that's a nice little signing there, bringing Brenner in if he wasn't going to be consistently playing at Spurs. We see Arsenal making some big money as they sell Leonardo Larrahondo, which is a 21-year-old new-gen Colombian centre-back, but they sell him to Premier League rivals Manchester United, which is an interesting move. Played 29 times last season and was pretty good, got an average rating of just over 7. Came in from Deportivo Cali in Colombia. They do get a very, very nice profit on him, though. Just 1.4 million to sign him back when he was 19. Now a £48 million move to Manchester United. So we'll see how he gets on. Already a regular Colombian international. Looks like a superb player. But they also sell Marcus Leonardo, their Brazilian striker, who heads off to RB Leipzig. They spent £40.5 million on him to bring him in from Juventus 2 years ago. And, a year and a half ago, actually. He only played 28 times, scoring 6 goals. I can't count at the moment, apparently. So wasn't particularly involved too much in Arsenal's play. And they get a tiny profit on him in his move to RB Leipzig. Christian Pulisic is gone from the Premier League. He's off to Barcelona. Though Chelsea do bring in Ander Barrenetxea. I do remember this guy. I actually missed him leaving. I remember when he signed, really early on. And actually, he started well for Newcastle and then just went backwards. Ended up going to Inter Milan, where Newcastle lost a lot of money. Had a good season and a half at Inter. And now Chelsea bring him back to the Premier League for £41.5 million. So we'll see how he gets on. But he may, I would imagine he's only going to be a rotation player and he won't see too much playing time with how strong a side Chelsea have, especially going forwards. Oh, I remember this guy. This is another new gen player. Benjamin Anor. We saw him last season quite high up in the defensive statistics for Crystal Palace. Obviously, Palace went down, and Sheffield United make a big money move, just over £40 million for the Palace Academy graduate. Had a reasonably okay season last season for his first actually playing in the Premier League. Did play every single game as well and scored a goal, so that's quite nice for him. But Sheffield United taking a chance on him that he will keep performing or start performing to a higher standard. Another interesting one is Henry Lawrence leaving Sheffield United, because we've seen how good he's been as well, or how at least statistically good he's been. Manchester United decide that they'd like a little bit of that as well. Former Chelsea Academy graduate. We knew that he was consistently playing for Sheffield United. Do you wonder how consistent he's going to be for Manchester United? Just one appearance so far. Hopefully Henry Lawrence at least gets a decent bit of game time. Arsenal selling some more players, though they have brought in Devin Wrench, the Dutch centre-back, although I would probably describe him more as a CDM at 5'11", without too much jumping reach or heading either. But he has started playing for Arsenal straight away. I have a strange feeling Arsenal might struggle this season. We have been on here for quite a bit though, so let's try and summarise this a little bit quicker. As we see Liverpool selling, West Ham selling Nikola Vlasic to AC Milan, Chukwueze heading to Leeds. We've got quite a few players going out actually. Jamie Donnelly is an interesting one. Northern Irish striker from Spurs heading to Everton for big money, to be fair, at £27 million. For just a squad player, and that's Everton's biggest transfer. Manchester United have brought in Conrad de la Fuente, the American winger. That is definitely a name I do recognise. Was at Barcelona through Marseille and then RB Leipzig, so he's now a Manchester United player. Ismaila Sarr's gone. Darwin Núñez is gone. The man who scored the FA Cup winning goal for Tottenham last season, now sold to Juventus. And they've also sold Marcelino Núñez, who they only signed last year, to OGC Nice. So some slightly strange moves have been going on recently. Nicholas Dyer's a name I recognise because Fulham acquired him in a player exchange where they actually gained money on that. And now they've spun him off for near 20 million to Aston Villa. So Fulham have done really well in that transfer. And then they've also acquired Cade Gordon. I don't really know why I'm on about Fulham, because I'm pretty sure they're in the Championship. Yeah, they lost in the playoff semi-final, didn't they, to Derby? We see Derby's biggest transfer is Zach Medley, the Belgian centre-back. Since when was he Belgian? Born in London, is English, but has a Belgian cap. Okay. I did not know that he was part Belgian. Zach Medley, the biggest transfer for Derby. Southampton have had a couple transfers in Galeno and Ivan Masson. Burnley have brought in Antonio Sablone, a 20-year-old new-gen Dutch centre-back. Yep, it has left-back highlighted, but he's certainly a centre-back. He comes in to try and develop there at Burnley. Charlie Cresswell's back with Sheffield United. See Hannoa Masengo making another move as he heads to Derby. There's a player exchange in here as well. Jeff Kitely, though he's heading to the Championship, so I won't look at that one yet. Brighton, their biggest move appears to be Fran Fulesier from Alaves. Played a long time for Alaves, actually. 30-year-old Argentinian winger. Seems to be their biggest move of the window. Trying to see if we spot any other teams. James Ward-Prowse has left Leicester. He's off to Real Madrid. That's a very intriguing move. Harry Wilson off to Brentford in the Championship. Southampton have signed an entire other club in Everton. He is now 32. He's a player that, hey, a few football managers ago, that would have been a spectacular signing. But now in FM22 and a now 32-year-old Everton, it's a slightly less interesting one. You see Matteuzinho becoming a backup right back at Liverpool. I think other than that, that is where we'll wrap up this little section. We do see Nico Elvedi heading to Sheffield United. But we can also take a look quickly at the table, and we have two sides on a perfect 9 of 9 points. And those teams are Manchester City, unsurprisingly, with a +8 goal difference. What have they done? They've even beaten Liverpool 2-0 at Anfield. Okay, Man City might be scary. They dispatched Leeds and Bournemouth as well. But Leicester, doing it again. We had a couple of seasons previously where Leicester just kept winning early on and then immediately dropped off. They've had wins over Sheffield United, Derby and Brighton so far. So the Sheffield United game, definitely the most impressive one. We see Villa and Chelsea up here as well. But what a start from Blackburn. Frank Lampard off to a very good start. They've got wins over Everton at Goodison Park. Not Goodison Park anymore, actually, is it? It's the Bramley Moor Dock Stadium, which they moved into in 2024. So Everton have got their new stadium going. And have done for a little while, actually. But a win over Arsenal at home as well, that was the opening game of the season. So Blackburn technically were top for a day. But if we look to the bottom of the table, we've got three sides without any points so far at all. And they are Brighton, but they have had defeats to Spurs, Liverpool and Leicester. That's fair enough. We see Derby down here, unsurprisingly. But again, Arsenal, Leicester and Spurs, so a pretty difficult start there. And they've held their own, only having a -4 goal difference. And then there's Bournemouth, who again have had a really tricky start actually, but they have been dispatched or dismantled through those 3 games. Take a really quick look at player stats. We see Moise Kean topping the goal scoring charts at 3. Phil Foden, a player we haven't mentioned too much in this save, is topping average rating right now and assists with 3. And the Golden Glove, Ederson hasn't conceded a goal yet. And then Alisson and Juan Musso in behind on 2. So what we're going to do now, we're going to jump ahead to November, which will just bring about another Premier League roundup. We'll be at roughly 10 games of the season by then, and we'll get a proper dive into the team and player stats at that point as well. We picked this season back up at the start of November, and an immediate look to the Premier League table just shows how potentially ridiculous this Manchester City side is right now. They are 7 points clear at the top of the Premier League after just 10 games of the season. 9 wins and 1 draw. The 1 draw coming at home against Sheffield United. So what a performance that was from Sheffield United, who are currently 8th, top of the outside looking in 7. Although somebody is very much missing. And that somebody is Newcastle, down in 13th right now. So they decided to spend a decent amount of money, and it has backfired so far. But behind Manchester City, it's a chasing pack being led by Chelsea, which is kind of unsurprising. We've seen them be the closest challengers to Man City for a long time now. But Liverpool are in there, Manchester United. Leicester are still keeping up a reasonable run at potential Champions League football. Normally they've chopped off more than this by now already, but they're still there. Spurs and Arsenal hanging around as well. And surprisingly, Norwich up in 9th. I'm surprised to see them doing quite so well, but it is nice to see. If we look at the bottom end of the table, we have 3 teams standing out a little bit at the moment. Brighton currently bottom of the league in their second season back at the top flight. They have got a couple of wins. In fact, one over Sheffield United. So I think Sheffield United have had a weird season so far. They've got one over Burnley as well. Derby's couple of wins, again, over Sheffield United, and then Brighton. So two of Sheffield United's 3 losses have been to the bottom 2 sides in the league. So you think about that, you turn those into wins, all of a sudden, Sheffield United will be tied second. So they could be doing better than they are, and they're still doing pretty well as it is. But Bournemouth, the other side down there, they've picked up a draw as well. So they're on 7 points. They've got wins over West Ham and Derby. Everton down the bottom again, because they just never start a season well. Despite the fact that actually Calvert-Lewin's got 6 goals. Jefferson there on 6, and Sesko's back again. He's got 6 so far. They're all tied for top scorer. But we'll get into the stats in a moment. We'll have a look at manager movements, but it would seem that every manager is still where they started. I think manager watch, potentially Brighton, Everton, Leeds. Leeds are down here again in 15th. They have really tailed off in the last season and a half. Newcastle down here as well. I think that's a job to watch. But Blackburn going well in 12th, and then Bournemouth and Derby struggling. But we will get into player stats now. Well, we'll start with team stats. And we'll look to goals scored first. Manchester City way out in front on that one. Averaging almost 3 goals a game. 2.7 goals a match for Manchester City. Next best is Chelsea and Sheffield United on 19 each. We look at the lower end of that. Newcastle have scored just 7 goals this season. Well, that's their major issue. Derby and Burnley with just 7 as well. We go to goals conceded. We find Chelsea and Manchester City, the top 2 conceding just 5 each. Manchester United at 8. And Spurs under 1 a game as well with just 9. We look to most conceded. Bournemouth have conceded 21. Brighton on 19. They're the 2 major standout sides in regards to that stat. Going to individual player stats, we'll skip to goals first. So it is the 3 we previously mentioned in Sesko, Jefferson and Calvert-Lewin tied on 6. We've got a few guys in here with 5 as well, including 2 more Manchester City players in Liam Delap and Erling Haaland. I'm intrigued now. What formation is Vincent Kompany playing? He's playing a 4-4-2. How much is Liam Delap actually playing? Right, he's only actually started 2 games and made 6 bench appearances and has scored 5. His minutes per goal is 60 minutes. And that's not even the best in the league. The best in the league is actually Murray Gibson, the new gen lad that we saw sign from Fulham. He's got 3 goals in just 1 start and 2 sub appearances. So he's averaging 1 every 45. That's certainly not a bad effort. A few other guys on 5. We see Brenner in his first season with Aston Villa as an actual starting striker with 5 in his first 9. Harry Kane here as well. Moise Keane has added a couple more since the last stop off. And Martin Satriano is still here as well. So Jefferson and Satriano still the main goal scorers for Sheffield United. Quite a few guys on 4 as well. You kind of breeze through there. We see Murray Gibson at the bottom on 3 there. Vinicius Jr., a player we haven't mentioned for 2 or 3 seasons. He's here with 3 as well. Look to expected goals, which is actually led by Romelu Lukaku. I want to see how many he's actually got. He's only got 2, but he does lead the league in XG. So he's starting to convert a lot less chances than he was previously. Look to assists, which we see topped by Phil Foden, runaway leader on 8. But then Benjamin Anor, the new gen English winger, with 5 assists in his first season with Sheffield United in just 7 games. Well, yeah, 7 games. 6 and 1 sub appearance. That is brilliant from Mr. Anor. Bruno Fernandes here on 4 as well. And then a bunch of guys with 3 assists. A few Blackburn players in here. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall playing for Norwich. Shola Shortire, a player we mentioned in the summer transfer window. He's got 3 assists, as well as Harvey Elliott and Luis Diaz. If you look to key passes, we actually find Tariq Lamptey topping a passing category rather than a defensive category. As with Osam Sarawi as well, actually. He topped key passes last season, I think. And he's up there again with 22 key passes and 2 assists. So Osam Sarawi's been a seriously good signing by Southampton. He wasn't great in 2025-26, but that was his first Premier League season. Southampton now in their 4th straight season back in the top flight. But he's been a really good player for them, not someone that I'm particularly familiar with. We've got a few guys who've created 20 chances as well. Done 20 key passes, not created chances. We'll look at created chances in a second. But we've got Mbappe, who only appears here. I mean, there's not too many goals or assists, just 2 goals, 3 assists so far. But I'm pretty sure Mbappe is playing on the wing, which certainly is not ideal for him. But Haaland and Luka Sucic, a Croatian central midfielder. Again, not a player I'm too familiar with, who went RB Salzburg to Bayern and has actually been at Spurs for a little while. Played over 100 Premier League games. You see chances created. Funnily enough, Phil Foden has created 8 chances and got 8 assists, which is pretty wild. Luka Sucic is here as well, actually, with 7 chances created, and Yeremy Pino there in 3rd. So he's become a lot more creative this season, which is good to see. You see crosses attempted, another stat topped by Tariq Lamptey, as well as dribbles made. Let's have a look at dribbles. We see Leon Bailey and a couple of West Ham players in Bergwijn and Lazari there as well, and Mbappe too. We look to defensive statistics. Tackles won, currently being led by Wilfred Ndidi, along with a new gen player who's playing every game right now for Manchester City. Tim Eaves, a right back. 3 caps at under 21 level for England. No senior call up yet. But he looks like he will be a very regular part of the England setup and this Manchester City side for a good while. Actually came through the academy in the very first intake, has had some loan spells. I don't know why that's there. That's obviously wrong. He was actually at Man City permanently. But he is played for Watford in the Championship and then made the step up to playing consistently in the Premier League, where he's been decent. He's not been incredible, but he looks like a reasonably good player. And to be playing for Man City week in, week out as a 21-year-old, or 22-year-old, sorry, that is very impressive. We've got Milos Kerkez, who was signed from Fulham last season by Everton. He's here as well. And Noah Katterbach, who is from FC Köln originally and spent a season or 2 at PSG. Has actually been at Villa for a while, 87 appearances for him. And he has been, again, a decent player. Struggled a little bit more this season, but he's up there in tackling statistics. We look to key tackles. We have 2 Blackburn players with 4. We see Blackburn doing pretty well this season so far. The only promoted side not in the relegation zone right now. They have David Carmo and Alfie Dorrington up there on that stat. A few guys with 3 key tackles as well. Bremer, that's confusing. So there is a Brazilian centre-back for Leeds called Bremer, and Villa have a Brazilian striker called Brenner. Okay, Bremer's actually been in the Premier League for a really long time. Went to Leeds on a free after Newcastle released him. That was a very nice pickup from Leeds. He is 31, but that's a solid little player right there. He is leading the key headers stat. James Justin is back in defensive statistics. He's there with most blocks. Dodo with the most interceptions so far, ahead of Connor Bradley, a Northern Irish fullback for Derby. Again, not someone I'm particularly familiar with. And again, James Justin here with Peter Kioso, who we've seen in a couple of stats actually already for him. So he's having a nice little season so far. Romelu Lukaku, leading fouls. And Diogo Queiroz here on stats as well defensively. Finally, for this little section, let's have a look at how the goalkeepers are getting on. Clean sheets, actually not led by Ederson. It's led by Edouard Mendy. But look at this now. You see the ages of the top keepers in the Premier League. Mendy's 36, Ederson's 35, Alisson's also 36. There's going to come a point in the very near future. It's Alphonse Areola as well. He's 35. There is a point coming up in this save where all of the big sides are going to be changing goalkeeper when theirs retires in the near future. So that's going to be a very interesting situation. We've got Alisson and Onana on 4 clean sheets each, and then a few keepers there on 3. We've got Gavin Bazunu, the Blackburn keeper, on most saves held. Carl Jakob Hein, the goalkeeper for Derby. I think I mentioned him a few seasons ago at Arsenal, but Ramsdale seems to have won his job back after nearly being sold at one point. And let's take a look at expected goals prevented. That stat is actually led by Gavin Bazunu. So that's really good to see. The young Irish goalkeeper, the Irish international, is having a very decent season so far. Only 13 conceded in 10 Premier League games. That is honestly remarkably impressive, considering he'd only played 1 Premier League game, and that was for Manchester City in the 22-23 season in his career previously. He steps into the Prem for the first time properly, and he's having a pretty good season so far. So that's really nice to see. Ederson's up there as well with Edouard Mendy. Carl Jakob Hein is actually having a reasonably decent season. And Dominik Livakovic is back. He's now the Southampton goalkeeper. Okay. Had some mixed seasons with Stade Rennes. Had sort of half a really good season, then an average season, then a really good season. And last year was not brilliant, but does join Southampton for just over 12 million. So Livakovic is looking okay. Destinoglu's back to not being terrible. Actually, Marek Rodak's back as well as a Norwich keeper. Outside of that, looking at the bottom end of things, do we see any outfield players on the list this time? I don't think we do. If you missed the last video, we had Sander Berge and a Burnley centre-back in the goalkeepers list because they'd had to go in for a game. But Alexander Nubel is struggling so far. Juan Musso, actually, for the start he had, has rather dropped away, and Spurs' keepers not doing as well as they did last season. Sees them dropping down to, is it 6th in the table? Yeah, so they're 6th. But what we're going to do now is we are going to simulate ahead to the beginning of January. We'll take a look at how the European group stages go, and then we'll get back to the Premier League and see if there are any managerial changes and how the table looks at the roughly halfway stage of the season. We've now moved forward to the 1st of January 2029, so the January transfer window has just opened at this exact moment. But we're going to start off by looking at the European group stages and how the Premier League sides have got on. We firstly take a look at Newcastle, and the group goes fairly as I expected. Newcastle do top it though, which helps them get through straight away to the last 16 stage. They finish 1 point ahead of Lyon. There were a couple draws in there. They actually did beat Lyon and then drew the home game. They actually won in France, which is a very impressive result. Did have a draw in Zagreb though, but like I said, they had a 2-0 win at Lyon, a 6-0 win at home against Shamrock Rovers. Though, praise to Shamrock Rovers, they did win a game. They beat Dinamo Zagreb at home, so very good job from them. But Newcastle go through, they avoid the first knockout round, as do Arsenal. And Arsenal go through, they clean 6 from 6, including a 4-1 home win over Malmo, a 3-0 home win over Sporting Lisbon. Some pretty impressive results in there. A 3-0 win in Zoya is a pretty good result. But I think I got that group right as well. Arsenal and Sporting Lisbon are the teams to advance. Yeah, Sporting Lisbon get 2 wins over Malmo and Zoya. And then Malmo and Zoya actually alternate results between each other. But Malmo's Malmo's goal difference was one better, so they get third. But Arsenal, Newcastle, straight into the last 16, so no fixtures to look at there. And then moving on to the 5 Premier League teams in the Champions League, one of those rare cases, and Spurs in Group A actually do advance. I honestly didn't think they would, seeing PSG and AC Milan in that group. It was very, very close in the end. PSG actually losing 2 games, both away at AC Milan and at Spurs, but PSG end up topping the group with 12. And Spurs get through on 8 points, which looks like, obviously I haven't gone all the way down, but it looks like that might be the lowest number of points that any team got and still made it to the last 16. It was 2 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. Obviously, they had that win over PSG, and the other win was actually at home against AC Milan. So Spurs drew and lost to Shakhtar Donetsk, but Donetsk finished bottom of the group. That is very surprising. It was a 3-0 loss in Donetsk, which is a terrible result, but Spurs somehow sneak through. They will have to play a group winner. Manchester City in Group C will advance as group winners, though there were a couple of draws in there at Valencia and at home against Porto. Surprisingly, Porto finished bottom of that group, and Valencia head through with Manchester City. Liverpool only just sneaked through. My word, that got close. I think Liverpool get through by 1 goal. It might be done by fixtures against each other, but in that case, I mean, Benfica had a goal in their loss and they shared results, so it might be goal difference. But however it's done, Liverpool sneak through. Ajax end up topping the group. So Liverpool will also have to play a group winner. And so will Chelsea, because Chelsea only comes second as well, behind Juventus. Chelsea lose both games to Juventus, so absolutely no revenge gained whatsoever. The Juventus also only drew at Nice and at Salzburg, so they only ended up 2 points behind them, were a big 7 points clear of OGC Nice, so no real worries there for Chelsea. And the final team is Manchester United, and they actually get 15 points, but also only comes second in the group, behind Inter Milan on I don't even know what. Because both games were 2-1. United took one of them, Inter took the other. They ended on the same goal difference as well. Inter did score 3 more goals, though. So I think Inter topped the group on goals scored in the end. Leipzig didn't really put up too much of a fight. They end up only beating Vitória twice. And unfortunately for Vitória, in what I imagine is their Champions League debut, they end up with 0 points. But we are now in a very interesting situation where 4 of the Premier League sides will have to play group winners. Well, they're PSG, Barcelona, Ajax, Juve, Real Madrid, Real Sociedad winning their group. That's a very odd group. Real Sociedad, Galatasaray, Copenhagen and Genk. I don't know how that group came to be, but I think you probably want Real Sociedad. Potentially you want Ajax. But let's have a look. Man City, the only group topper. Let's have a look what the last 16 looks like. And Manchester United will play Real Sociedad. I think that's probably the best you could have hoped for. Maybe Ajax, but Bayern Munich get that one after they come second in their group. We look down a little further. Manchester City, the only group winner. They will take on Borussia Dortmund. Chelsea will have to face Real Madrid, Spurs Juventus, and Liverpool Barcelona. So this is going to be a very dramatic last 16, with a lot of the English sides away in the second legs. So we'll definitely check back and see how they get on, but it's definitely not been the regular English domination we're used to. We now come back to the Premier League, and almost instantly after we left the I think 3rd of November stop-off point, there were two sackings. Leeds sacking Vincenzo Montella. He didn't do a great job. Obviously, he was at Norwich, I believe. Left Norwich at around this point last season to take over at Leeds. Kept them up, pushed them up the table a little bit, but it's gone pretty wrong again. We saw they were down in 15th at the November stop-off. He has been removed and actually replaced by Derby's manager, Milos Veselinovic. Heads to Leeds United, a team that is much, much, much more likely to stay up, though he is disappointed at how things are going. So I haven't looked at the table yet, but Leeds might be in the bottom 3, maybe. He has been there for a month now. I'm obviously still not too impressed with what's happening. But Simone Inzaghi, I did say Newcastle would be a hot seat as well. Inzaghi gone from St James's Park and actually replaced by the ex-Leeds United manager, Alfred Schroeder, who had a spell with Ajax, actually. He was the Ajax boss, but now comes in at Newcastle, who, for the first time in quite a long time, actually, were really, really struggling. They've been solid European places for the past good 3 or 4 years. So, interesting to see they go with Schroeder, who had such a good time with Leeds, except for that last season. And we see that Jess Thorup has been sacked by Burnley for poor results. And look who's back again. He's back again. Roberto De Zerbi onto his 4th job in English football in just 2 seasons. This man has no loyalty whatsoever. He's now left Crystal Palace, who he was relegated with for the end of last season, and is now managing Burnley. Okay. And obviously Derby had to replace the outgoing Veselinovic, and they end up hiring, literally yesterday, South African manager Mankoba Mkhithi. I'm going to imagine that the G is silent. I have zero clue how to say that name. But he comes in from the Sundowns in South Africa. Looks like a really good manager, to be fair. I still don't imagine that Derby will stay up. They're now on to a new manager, not through choice. But we'll see how he gets on. Let's have a look at the Premier League table. 21 games in, actually, so we're slightly further on than I thought. But Manchester City, 9 points clear at the top, ahead of Chelsea. And then it's Liverpool and Manchester United looking pretty solid for the other Champions League spots. Sheffield United are 5th. I said that this was a team that you wanted to be on. It's a team on the up and up. And they are making a real case for European football next season. Anor is topping the assists alongside a couple other names. Satriano is tied with Sesko, the top scorer in the Premier League. They have put together a really good team there, and Paul Heckingbottom is having the time of his life. We actually see Aston Villa and Leicester making up the other 2 European spots currently in 6th and 7th, both on 33 points. So Villa have pushed up and Leicester are hanging around. Norwich in 8th. What a season Norwich are putting together at the moment. That is seriously impressive. Ahead of Arsenal down in 9th and Spurs in 11th. So it's gone very wrong for them. Spurs obviously with Champions League football for the first time in a while. Arsenal with Europa League football, but they should be used to European football. They've been in it most seasons. So I don't know what's going on there. Newcastle trying to revive themselves as their 10th. Blackburn still out the relegation spots, up in 15th. 5 points clear of Burnley, who are actually in the bottom 3 at the moment. So Roberto De Zerbi could get relegated for a 3rd straight season. Went down with Bournemouth, went down with Palace, and is now Burnley manager, but Bournemouth and Derby making up the other relegation spots. Though Derby only 3 points off safety, which is honestly better than I thought they would do, and they've already beaten their 07-08 tally. So well done. 4 wins on the season, with wins over Leeds and Burnley added on now as well. But other than that, I think that is about it. The only other thing I can think is I forgot to check the Community Shield at the beginning of the season. Obviously, Tottenham, winners of the FA Cup, taking on Manchester City, the winners of the Premier League. And it was Manchester City getting their 4th Community Shield of the save. Goals from Raheem Sterling and Erling Haaland winning them that. But the next stop-off point is going to be the beginning of February, where we will take a look at January transfers and how the league table looks roughly 4 or 5 games further on. We are now 1 month further on the 2nd of February. The transfer window has just closed for January, and there is a huge transfer at the top of the list, with Wolfsburg getting £88 million from Chelsea for Hirokazu Matsumoto. This is a 21-year-old new-gen midfielder who looks absolutely ridiculous. He is only 5'7", so he's not a commanding force, but still has 15 strength. So you're not going to knock him off the ball. But this is an unbelievable player that Wolfsburg managed to sign for £625,000. And he instantly came into their team. And what's that, 3 seasons? Was absolutely brilliant for his age. Now makes the move to Chelsea, and he's stepped straight in and been pretty darn good again. So Hirokazu Matsumoto, this is a player that we are going to see for quite a while in this save. And Chelsea not only prepping themselves for the future, but trying to make a push towards Manchester City once again, because they know that Man City is starting to dominate once again. The second biggest transfer of January is actually Tottenham. Now, we know they were down in 11th at the beginning of January. They decide to splash £55 million on Jan Thielmann, an attacking midfielder. Wasn't at Bayern for too long, actually. Was with FC Köln for a lot of the time. Played bit part for Bayern Munich, but now comes in at Spurs to be a regular starter. Spurs know they have to pick it up pretty quickly, so they're bringing a German international. Looking a little bit further down, Manchester United actually selling Victor Christensen. So he was a player that came in very early, has ended up playing 175 Premier League games, but is now shipped off to Inter Milan for a potential 58 million. Not much further down, we actually spot Newcastle back spending a decent sum of money again, potentially over £50 million, on Nicolo Fagioli from Fiorentina. Long-time Fiorentina player after coming through at Juventus. Looks like a really, really good player. 27 years of age, does turn 28 in 10 days' time. But he could certainly be a very controlling midfielder. They list him as an important player, so we should see quite a bit of him. Has registered 1 assist in his first 3 games so far, and has looked pretty good, actually, for Newcastle. So hopefully that signing works out for them. Again, a side who is definitely underperforming so far this season. So they are trying to make a push back in the right direction. Wolves selling another player, actually going from Wolves to Villa, which is a little bit of a controversial West Midlands move there. But Moises Caicedo, the Ecuadorian midfielder, heading to Villa Park. Again, looks like a pretty solid midfielder to me. Obviously, there are some gaps in here, but it's nothing too major, especially if you want him to be a reasonably creative, and he's got really good stamina. I was going to say hard-working. 12 work rate isn't the highest, but it looks like he could do a pretty decent job for Villa. Just listed as squad player, so it's pretty good rotation. As we go down a little bit more, Chelsea actually selling a player back to Wolfsburg in Brace, 22-year-old new-gen Spanish attacking midfielder. Actually scored on his Wolfsburg League debut. So he heads the other way as he goes out from Chelsea. We see Manchester City's biggest signing of the January window, £27 million on 21-year-old Brazilian midfielder Pedro Felipe. So both Man City and Chelsea looking at younger players. Chelsea going with someone that can immediately step in. Manchester City going with someone who may be more rotation for now, but could develop into a solid enough player. Hopefully he gets some game time at least and doesn't just rot in the under-23s like the game does sometimes. See, Spurs actually selling on this respect. Ezri Konsa is heading to Manchester United. He is now 31 years of age, over 100 Premier League games for Tottenham. Obviously, Spurs make a loss on him, but he is now into his 30s. Was having a really good season with Spurs, actually. Was having a bit of a bounce-back season. His last really solid year had been 24-25. Was reasonably good in 26-27. And has now really stepped his game back up again, but will be heading to Old Trafford to try and keep that going. You see, Reading, obviously relegated last season, they sell Luca Oriano to Aston Villa. So Villa are really trying to confirm that they are a European calibre side. Were 6th, I believe, in the January stop-off. So they are trying to make sure that they make Europe. Comes in for 18.5 million and a player exchange. Going the other way is Jason Bacon. And just because it is such a good name, I thought I'd take a look at him. He is a 5'6" Northern Irish midfielder, just 19 years of age. Has actually been sent out on loan from Reading since they received him. He's now playing for Port Vale on loan. If we scroll down one more page, we actually don't see any more at all until we get right to the bottom, where we find Newcastle selling Gabriel Barbosa, who is now 32, over to Spurs, which is almost a slightly confusing move because we know that they sold Brenner at the start of the season to Villa, and then they end up bringing in Barbosa to also be a backup striker. I think Brenner probably wasn't accepting the backup role. So in the end, they turn to another Brazilian striker. You see Carl Walker-Peters leaving West Ham. He heads to the Championship with Wolves. Luka Podolak, as quickly as he joined, is now gone. I didn't notice this transfer at the time, actually. Valentin Rosier is back yet again. He's back with Brighton this time. He has been in and out of the Premier League a remarkable amount. Can we find any more transfers? Wolves actually making a few signings, which is interesting. But it looks like it's not been the busiest of January transfer windows. We do see Marquinhos coming in, though, which is quite an interesting one. Spurs bringing in a 34-year-old Marquinhos for £4.6 million. Is listed as an important player, so we should see him appear a few times in the back half of this season. But the last thing we can do in this February stop-off is have a look at how the Premier League looks. It's 4 to 5 games further on. Manchester City still lead the way, but that gap is down to 6 points now. Chelsea closing in a little bit. Both sides have only lost one game. Manchester City actually lost to Chelsea 3-2. And Chelsea's loss was to Manchester City 2-1. So with 13 games left, we know that they won't be playing each other at any point. So Man City is still very much in the driver's seat. Manchester United actually not too far back, though they have played a game extra. Liverpool still chilling in that Champions League spot, with Leicester and Norwich in 5th and 6th. And Newcastle have recovered quite well. They're now up to 7th. Again, Leicester and Norwich have played a game extra, though Leicester are 3 points clear as well. So they look like they might genuinely be 5th. Norwich could end up as low as about 10th, but it's still an extremely impressive season. We look to the bottom of the table. Brighton have actually got themselves out of the bottom 3. They were out in January, weren't they? They're still hanging around dangerously close, only ahead of Bournemouth on goal difference at the moment. Burnley 2 points adrift. Unfortunately for Derby, they haven't picked up any more points in the last 4 games. They're now 6 points adrift of Brighton. Leeds are still very, very much struggling in 16th. They do have a 4-point cushion to Bournemouth, but we've seen teams get drawn in. Blackburn as well starting to slip a little bit further down. So we'll see if they get drawn in towards the bottom half. But what we are going to do now is we are going to jump forward to April, where we'll get another look at how the European knockout, we'll get a first look at how the European group stages are panning out. Not group stages, I know what I'm saying, knockout stages. I hope you know what I meant. And we'll also get another deep dive into team and player stats. And you can see Benjamin Sesko might be on for his 2nd straight Golden Boot. We've now moved ahead to the 3rd of April 2029, and to start with, we're going to have a look at how the European knockout stages are going. I have just noticed that the Europa League final is being played at Villa Park, which feels a little strange, but okay. We have a look at the 2 Premier League sides remaining in the Europa League as we got to the knockout stages. Arsenal are in to the quarter-finals to face Atalanta, but only by the skin of their teeth. A penalty shootout sees them past Bayer Leverkusen. However, Newcastle were less lucky in taking on German opposition. They get just rather destroyed by RB Leipzig, 4-1. Leipzig will go on to play AC Milan. This is quite the Europa League quarterfinals. The sides in this, there are some very strong sides. I don't think Arsenal are going to win this. And then to the 5 Premier League sides that were into the last 16 of the Champions League, we see Chelsea immediately standing out with a 6-0 rout of Real Madrid in the last 16. That is a very surprisingly easy result for them. They will now take on Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals. Manchester United, I said they got the nice draw. I was very mistaken. They are knocked out in the last 16 by Real Sociedad. Now, they were a side that I mentioned reasonably early on in the save, were bringing in a lot of money. They are now really putting that money to good use. And Real Sociedad will actually play Spurs in the quarterfinals because Spurs have managed to overcome Juventus, something Chelsea have been unable to do the last 4 times they've played them. Spurs get a 1-1 draw and take out Juventus on penalties. If you can find a way to do it, you'll find a way to do it. We go down a little bit further and we find that Liverpool are through to the quarterfinals as they have knocked out Barcelona 4-2. They will take on Inter Milan in the quarterfinals after they overcame Valencia 5-1. We see that Manchester City demolished Borussia Dortmund 6-1, though they go into a mouth-watering quarter-final against PSG, who overcame Galatasaray 5-0. So still 4 English sides going in the Champions League, and they've all avoided each other going into the quarter-finals. We could actually have an all-English semi-finals in the Champions League. With us being in April, that also means that the Carabao Cup final has been and gone, and it is another piece of silverware for Leicester City. They won the Europa League a couple of seasons back in save, and they now add the Carabao Cup to that with a 3-0 win over Arsenal in the final. A really controlled performance as well. Armando Broja opening the scoring, instantly followed by Maxence Kakare. Not 100% sure how to say that last name. He gets in there as well. He's been up there on assists during the season. And then Mateus Nascimento rounding it out in the 90th minute, handing Leicester a piece of silverware and guaranteeing them European football no matter where they finish. But bringing up the league table, here is how it now looks with roughly 6 to 7 Premier League games to go here. Manchester City have pulled out their lead a little bit again. They're up to 11 points now, though Chelsea do have a game in hand. Manchester United and Liverpool look very solidified in third and fourth. Looks like they'll be battling out for who gets what position there. And then Spurs have actually pulled off quite a decent recovery run here. They are up into fifth, a whole 13 points behind Liverpool. So we've kind of just had a big four this season. With Leicester currently in sixth, but they have confirmed at least Europa Conference League football with the aforementioned win of the Carabao Cup. It's actually very close in behind as well. Sheffield United there just a point behind, with Newcastle a point behind that, and Aston Villa, Norwich, and even West Ham are still kind of hanging around too. Arsenal down in 12th position. What a drop-off. What has happened there? There is then a bit of a gap back to Southampton and Leeds. If we look at the bottom of the table, Derby still 5 points adrift with only 6 games to go. Not looking good for them, but honestly, they've got more points than I thought they would. Brighton are a point adrift, though they've got a game in hand over Burnley, Blackburn, and Bournemouth, who have actually pulled themselves out of the bottom three at the moment. Burnley and Blackburn, the other teams in trouble. Everton are down in 15th, but they look relatively safe. If we check on manager movements, we do find 3 more managers have gone. We've had 2 sackings and 1 left for another job. And I don't understand it again. So, Thiago Motta was the first one gone. He was gone 24th of February after players lost confidence. Obviously, they are in the bottom 3. He gets replaced by Roberto Martinez, who was the Southampton manager. If we look back at the table, Southampton are pretty much safe. They're not going to go down. But he ends up leaving them to go to Brighton, who look like they could go down. And I can't say that facility-wise or money-wise there's going to be that much of a difference, but okay. Just a day later, Arsenal then sacked Luis Enrique. They've actually decided that they are going with an interim to the end of the season in Dan Misici. Really don't know how to say that name. Not someone I'm familiar with. Dan Misici will take it to the end of the season before Arsenal decide who they will hire. Obviously, Southampton are now on the manager search. After Roberto Martinez leaves them, currently David Horseman is the caretaker. But we'll see who Southampton hire or if they decide to go interim to the end of the season, as it looks like they're going to stay up. The only other thing we're going to do at this point is to take a look at team and player stats. So if we look at goals again, Man City's still way at the top there by 9 goals ahead of Chelsea, who have a big gap back to Liverpool. Sheffield United up in 4th, which is very impressive. Burnley have scored the least goals with just 21, and then Derby 22. Understandable as to why they are in the bottom 3. If we look to goals conceded, we find Manchester City just 18 conceded in 32 games. And then a couple of teams, Chelsea and Manchester United, in the mid-20s have conceded as well. If we look to the bottom of that list, it is Derby and Bournemouth who have both conceded 55, and then Blackburn and Brighton joining each other on 54. We move over to the individual player stats, and it is very much looking like Benjamin Sesko will be taking his 2nd straight Golden Boot. He's 7 goals ahead of his own teammate in Erling Haaland. Brenner for Aston Villa, look how good a season he's having since he left Spurs. And Martin Satriano here again as well. They're all on 16 to Benjamin Sesko's 23. Lukaku is actually here again. He's managed to get up to 15 goals on the season. And then Calvert-Lewin, Abel Ruiz has returned, even though Brighton are struggling. And Kylian Mbappe has actually managed to get himself to 14 goals as well. So he's gone on a bit of a scoring spree. We do find a new gen player with 11 goals for Southampton in James Mulama. He has come through the Southampton Academy. This is his first time actually playing in the Premier League. Last time out, he was scoring 11 in the Championship for Watford, and now he's got 11 currently in the Premier League. Is a very, very quick striker with a good first touch and good dribbling as well. Does look like a really good player. Maybe not the world beater kind, but certainly a solid Premier League forward there in James Mulama, so that's nice to see. We jump down to assists, if I can actually find it. Here it is. Phil Foden still leads the way. He is 4 ahead of both Benjamin Anor and Maxence Kakare again, actually. So he's having a very good season for Leicester. Bruno Fernandes and Kylian Mbappe just in behind. And mentioning Mbappe, actually, he has taken the lead in the key passes statistic ahead of Usam Sarawi, who has been right up there for the past 2 seasons. And Phil Foden obviously is there as well with the amount of assists he's got. Chances created, led by Harry Kane at 35 years of age. Ruben Neves up in second at 32 years of age. And then Phil Foden and Luka Sucic in behind there. If we look to the defensive statistics, actually, when I said Lukaku had done the most fouls, I think I was looking at the wrong stat. I may have been looking at fouled, in which case it's now Richarlison. If we take a look at some defensive statistics, we look to tackles won, and it's actually topped by Kylian Mbappe. He's doing defensive duties again as well. I think he might be playing right midfield, which is seeing him do some ball winning as much as him going forward. Okay, Milos Kerkez is there, and Tim Eaves is still there as well. But key tackles, that is now led by Trent Alexander-Arnold and Tyreek Mitchell, who's now playing for Sheffield United. See a Derby player leading key headers. Dodo still leading interceptions. And Andre actually has the most fouls now. We'll check out goalkeepers as well. Clean sheets is currently being led by Ederson, and it is now by a country mile. He has 17 clean sheets, 6 ahead of Edouard Mendy, Andre Onana, and Alisson, who are at 11 each. And then we'll take a look at XG prevented. Ederson at 16.5 XG prevented. Pretty sure that is the highest I've seen that stat at any point in this simulation. Ederson just getting better with age. Gavin Bazunu is still here as well. He's having a very good season for Blackburn. They are very much on the edge of potential relegation, but we'll see if they can somehow stay up. Mendy's doing pretty well as as David Raya actually. And then kind of a mix of Manchester United. The Carpentier has started to play some games. He's played 4 this season and actually only conceded 1 in those 4. So he's been pretty impressive, the young French goalkeeper. Onana still the number 1. This is interesting. Reece James has been in goal. This is a thing now. After I noticed it last season, Reece James has been in goal. So Joachim Mutzel's been in goal again for Liverpool. He is actually a goalkeeper though. Yeah, Reece James is definitely the standout. Plan now, we're going to jump forward to the final day of the season, and we are going to see what is still to play for. I think Man City may well have the title wrapped up by then. I think there should be a relegation battle by the looks of it between Bournemouth, Blackburn, Burnley and Brighton, with 2 of those 4 being able to stay up. Looks like Champions League places are done. There should be a battle for sort of 5th, 6th, possibly all the way down to like 10th or 11th, really. So there could be a good battle for Europe, but we'll see what it looks like on the final day of the season. We're now on to the 13th of May 2029, and it is the final day of the Premier League season. Just a quick little update. Southampton have indeed hired a new manager. And they've gone with Veljko Paunovic, somebody we did see a while ago with Reading. He ended up leaving Reading through his own choice to take over at Real Betis, where he stayed for a good 4 years, spent a year with Osasuna, and now returns to the Premier League with Southampton. But heading into the final day of the Premier League season, this is how the table looks. And Manchester City have gone back to back with Premier League titles. They have won 5 of the 7 that we have slow simmed. Vincent Kompany, if he wasn't already a club legend, which he already is, he's just becoming elite level legend. He's now won 2 Premier Leagues as a manager. And again, Benjamin Sesko is topping the player stats for goals. His second golden boot in a row will be heading his way. Champions League-wise, Chelsea, Manchester United and Liverpool confirm their places in the competition. And Sheffield United and Spurs will be playing Europa League football next season. What a spectacular effort from Sheffield United. The only thing up for debate now is whether they finish 5th or 6th. I don't think they would really care if they ended up 6th. They play Norwich away on the final day. Spurs head to Bournemouth, which leads on nicely to the relegation battle. We can see Brighton are relegated again. So the Roberto Martinez move really making no sense right now, considering Southampton are 12th and perfectly safe, and were at the time that he left. And Derby also down as well. Honestly, they've had a better season than I kind of expected. They're also on 26 points alongside Brighton. They were only 6 points from safety. And Brighton and Derby actually play each other on the final day. So the winner of that will actually end up quite close to safety. The other relegation spot, though, is, I was going to say up for grabs, but you don't want it. And technically, there are 4 sides involved. The obvious 2 are Blackburn and Bournemouth. And for anything to happen, Blackburn would have to beat Leeds at home, which is possible. Leeds down in 14th, they are safe, have had a pretty appalling season compared to what they'd been doing sort of 3 years ago. But Blackburn have to win that game in order to open up anything. That then brings in Bournemouth should that happen. And as mentioned, they host Tottenham. So you would imagine that Spurs would win that game. In the off chance that Blackburn win and Bournemouth get a draw, that could bring Burnley and Everton into the relegation battle. Burnley are at the champions Manchester City. You would imagine Man City will win that game. Everton are at home against second place Chelsea. So again, you would imagine Chelsea would win that game. There is a very outside chance that Everton could get relegated. Should they lose to Chelsea, Bournemouth get a point against Tottenham, because Bournemouth's goal difference is better, and Blackburn beat Leeds. So there's some stuff still to play for. Europe's kind of gone. Leicester have confirmed EC2 already. Villa could get 7th, but I don't know if that would be an EC2 spot because Leicester have it from the League Cup win. It might just be that Leicester take it no matter what. Leicester actually play Aston Villa. So Villa will be playing that one potentially just for pride, but it could give them a chance to get 7th. Newcastle will be looking to try and get as high as they can, although as high as they can is only 8th. I think the big standout team, what a season from Norwich. Their second straight season in the Premier League. Currently 10th with a game to go. Could finish as low as 12th, though unlikely. And a pretty good chance of finishing ahead of Arsenal, who have had an absolute shocker of a season and will not play European football next year unless they win the Europa League. which we'll find out in the next stop-off point that we're about to go to right now. So as normal from the final day, we have simmed a further 2 weeks forward to make sure that all competitions involving Premier League clubs are finished. And we're going to start with a summary of the Europa League. And Arsenal actually did indeed make the final, taking on an awful lot of Italian opposition. They overcame Atalanta 3-2 in the quarterfinals, then actually quite comfortably 6-2 over Roma in the semi-finals. But AC Milan was just a step too far. They fall 2-1 to the Milan club. And that means Arsenal will not play European football at all next season, despite reaching the Europa League final. And then up to the Champions League, and we get a very familiar-looking final. Chelsea versus Manchester City once again, but this time it is Chelsea taking revenge for having their Premier League title taken off them again, coming second behind Manchester City for a second straight year. But they just go and take a Champions League instead, and quite convincingly in the end, actually. They overcame Bayern Munich 5-3 in the quarterfinals. Then over Real Sociedad, what a run from them to make the semi-finals. But Chelsea completely undo them 6-0. And then, yeah, 3-0 win over Man City in the final. Very, very convincing run there from Chelsea. As mentioned, with Real Sociedad making the semi-finals, they overcame Spurs 2-1 in the quarterfinals. Liverpool actually going out in the quarterfinals as well on penalties to Inter Milan. Manchester City actually beat PSG 4-1, which was easier than I expected. Then a 5-2 over Inter Milan, but falling short to Chelsea in the final. We'll actually take a look at the goal scorers for this one. So for Chelsea, it was Kylian Mbappe with 2 and Edouard Camavinga with the other. So a very French-themed Champions League final win for Chelsea. Heading to the FA Cup final, and we actually got 2 different teams in that as well, getting Liverpool and Aston Villa playing the FA Cup final, and it is Liverpool who take the trophy. It would have been Villa's potential route into Europe as well. They fall short. Diomande opening the scoring for Liverpool. Luis Diaz adding a second inside 17 minutes. Moise Kean then did get Villa back into the game. But D. Webber in the 89th minute, 19-year-old David Webber, a youth graduate of Liverpool, scores in the FA Cup final to seal it for Liverpool. What a moment for him. Is this the next Michael Owen? I mean, he is 6 foot, so he's a bit big. But could this be the next Michael Owen, eh? Listed as a wonder kid. So let's see how much we see of David Webber in the future. And with all that covered, we return to the Premier League. And as we knew, Man City take the title. They actually do win on the final day as well to get to 98 points, which I think is their exact points tally from last season as well. Chelsea actually do better this season. They get 6 more points, but still finish 9 points behind. Sheffield United confirm their Europa League position and confirm 5th place with a 3-2 win away at Norwich. An incredible season from them. Spurs also confirming European football. They actually lost away at Bournemouth, so Bournemouth stay up, and they actually end up finishing 15th ahead of Everton and Burnley, so well done them. Leicester actually beat Aston Villa on the final day as well, so that knocked out any questions about 7th place. Leicester will play European football next season. Arsenal end up 10th with Newcastle in 9th. They all miss European football. But at the bottom of the table, it is another goodbye to Blackburn. Much better attempt this time in the Premier League. I think I've been a little bit harsh on them in their first 2 attempts, in that they were pretty bad. This time, they actually looked safe for a good portion of the season. They do slip down, though, and in the end, 31 points, not enough to stay up. They drew, a draw with Leeds was never enough. They had to win. In the end, Burnley actually lost to Manchester City, unsurprisingly. Everton did actually get a point against Chelsea, so I thought they were maybe the ones in danger. They weren't. It would be Blackburn, Brighton, and Derby going down. Have any managers been sacked at the end of the season? Does not appear to be. There were also. Oh, wait. Yes, there were. Phil Neville has been sacked by Everton. Was there for a while. There was a pattern building that they started badly and then recovered and finished relatively mid-table. They didn't recover this year. They did stay up, but they were still in relegation trouble on the final day. So Phil Neville is removed. So Everton will have a new manager going into next season. The last bit for us to check out here is to check team stats and individual player stats. Man City end up with 90 goals on the season ahead of Chelsea's 81. Least goals, Burnley with just 28, but they do stay up. Derby with 30 and Blackburn 32 as they both go down. See, Manchester City also only conceding 22 goals. I mean, I was surprised when Chelsea toppled Man City in the first place. Then I thought Chelsea wouldn't be toppled, and now it's looking like it's all in Manchester City's favour again. And how are Chelsea going to make that gap up? They have made it a little bit smaller. It went from 15 to 9. So they need another jump like that with a little bit added on. Chelsea did only concede 30. Manchester United only conceding 32. So much better defensive performance from them gets them third and Champions League football once again next season. Derby end up conceding the most at 65. A few other teams on 60 as well, though Bournemouth and Everton both stay up. So Bournemouth, the only promoted side to remain in the Premier League, as they will get a second season. As we once again move over to the individual player stats, it is a second straight Golden Boot for Benjamin Sesko. He's played 2 Premier League seasons and he is already up to 55 Premier League goals. 30 last season, down to 25 this year, but also only 29 starts and 2 sub-appearances. So you add in a few more games in there and he might be up towards 30 again. We end up with a 3-way tie for second place with Sheffield United's Martin Satriano, who has been brilliant for the past 2 seasons, alongside Erling Haaland, Sesko's teammate, there on 20, and Brenner, also on 20, in his first season with Aston Villa. We have Kylian Mbappe on 18. Lukaku still netting 16. Now he's now 36. Patson Daka appearing out of nowhere. We have hardly seen him at all. Is still at Leicester and pops in 14 goals this season. It's pretty good from him. Abel Ruiz with 14, despite the fact that Brighton get relegated. We look slightly further down. We see Harvey Elliott netting 11, which is quite nice. And Hugo Felix with 11 for Norwich. So a great effort there. Take a look to assists. Phil Foden actually didn't add any more assists. He stayed on 14. In fact, wait, did I check? Are these all the same as April? Because that's what it feels like, though Oscar seems to have appeared. Xavi Simon's having a very good season for Blackburn, despite them going down, so he may well get a nice little transfer at just 26 years of age. Look onto key passes, we find Kylian Mbappe topping that one, and Shola Shortire actually up in second, so he proved to be a very, very useful signing by Sheffield United. Jarrod Bowen up there for Bournemouth as well. He is 32 years of age now, still being productive for Bournemouth, and gets another Premier League season with them. So chances created was actually a tie between Harry Kane and Ruben Neves, so the older players getting it done. A few guys on 17 as well. Couple Man City, Spurs and a Chelsea player in there. Kai Havertz still creating chances and picking up 7 assists as well on the season. So he is still going well, even if I feel like I've mentioned him quite a bit less in recent seasons. Tariq Lamptey topping dribbles made. Kylian Mbappe offside the most at 28. Not good for him, but he still had a pretty darn good season. Even if Chelsea couldn't win the Premier League title, they did win a Champions League. If we look to tackles won, Kylian Mbappe comes second, one behind Milos Kerkez for Everton. We find two guys tied on 10 key tackles in Tyreek Mitchell and Sebastian Caceres. We look a little further down, we see Tim Eaves actually topping interceptions made, the new gen fullback for Manchester City. Ben White topping clearances, just proving how defensive Arsenal had to be and just how unproductive they were this season. Very surprising. Ryan Yambe with highest header percentage, and Herculano Franco ended up topping fouls, a new gen left back that we are familiar with because I remember them signing him. Yeah, it was quite a big signing, wasn't it? Certainly not as good a season in his first full season of playing. I mean, it was a full season technically last year, but he did only play 23 times. 35, much more of a full season. Not quite as good, but still a Premier League title nonetheless. So he's not going to knock that. And finally, we're going to end off with goalkeepers. Ederson will take another Golden Glove, and in emphatic fashion this year. 38 games, 20 clean sheets. Andre Onana, Ersin Destinoglu, and Alisson end up tied for second, but 8 clean sheets behind on 12. We look to expected goals prevented. Ederson ended up at 18.5. That is an unbelievable season from Ederson. Now 35, as I mentioned before, just getting better with age. Gavin Bazunu, unfortunately relegated with Blackburn, but has a really good season for them. Is he wanted by anyone? Currently no, so he might be a championship keeper again next season. I think he deserves another shot in the Premier League. He's proven that he can certainly do it. We look a little bit further down. Is Reece James still on the list? Reece James is still here. We also find Chris Lavery, 21 years old. Could he be Chelsea's next keeper after Edouard Mendy eventually either leaves or retires? Did struggle a little bit in the 4 games that he played. Did have 2 clean sheets though, which is still pretty impressive. Timothy Lototala was somebody I saw in the FA Cup final on the bench. Not a player I'm familiar with at all. Did apparently play 2 times for Spurs in this save in 22-23. Has made a few appearances for Villa. But other than that, that is going to wrap up the 2028-29 Premier League season. Manchester City take yet another Premier League crown. Chelsea are still the closest competitors, but starting to fall a little bit behind. And we say goodbye to Blackburn, Brighton, and Derby. Blackburn and Derby both only here for 1 season. Brighton go down again after 2 seasons? 2 seasons back in the Premier League. But when we get to the start of the next video, the start of the next season, we'll see who comes up, what signings are made, but it is set up very nicely in Manchester City's favour. If you have enjoyed the video, as always, the like button is there, share, comment, subscribe, everything like that. Thank you very much for sticking through these long videos, and hopefully I will catch you in the next one.